Ready, Chair.
Okay, I'll call this a special meeting to order and begin with the land acknowledgement statement. On Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. Okay, so on to the approval of the agenda. Would someone move that we adopt the agenda, please? Dawn, and the seconder? Jonathan? Thank you. All in favor? Great. We're not going to approve minutes of the last meeting because this is a special meeting. So at our regular meeting next week, we will approve the minutes from May the 13th. So we'll move on then with our item of business, which is a delegation from Community Services to discuss roof repairs of the Welcome Center. So you have the floor.
Okay, so basically there was an assessment done on these two buildings about 5 years ago as to condition of roof and such. We're in, I believe, the 5th year now. So we want to move forward before it gets to the critical stages to replace the roofing material. So the material that's there now is shingle, and there's been some discussion as to changing that up to a steel roof. So the steel roof is about 4 times the cost. Obviously, it's longer lived. What we need to know before we put out a request for quote is what are our limitations? As far as materials and that type of thing is concerned. The other issue is the soffit, the fascia needs to be redone as well. Do we need to repaint that, or should we replace it with a composite material that's long lived? It replicates what's there now look wise, and also the cupola. The top half of that's missing and has been for obviously a very long time. So it complicates things quite a bit because the flashings and the trim and such on the cupola has to be incorporated with the new steel roof. So if you're going to do the roof, you've almost got to do that at the same time so that nothing is disturbed or damaged in the process. The issue is, are we required to rebuild it to what it used to look like, or rebuild the existing structure, or get rid of it altogether? Again, the other thing is there's a number of, it's fairly complicated. It's not just a simple matter of throwing a roof on it. So it's how we're going to incorporate the repairs, whether they're going to have to be done as an item together, or whether they're going to be spread out over a number of years. But basically, what we need from the committee is what are we able to do, what is required for us, and do we have to keep the wood structure that is up there now, or can we, as I say, with the cupola, can we get rid of it? And for the soffit and the fascia, do we need to keep the wood, or can we move into a more durable material but keeping the look of it? Because this building here has been, all of the architectural features on the soffit and fascia have been removed, and they've just put flat boards and such. The other building is more original. So I'm assuming this would have to be brought up to that standard so that it's got its architectural features back. If that's not the case, then we may be able to do something completely different as far as capping what is there now. If they're not particular as to the style of, if we don't have to restore this, it doesn't make sense to spend all kinds of money to make the other one authentic and leave this one as is. So before we put out a quote and spend a lot of money on design costs and such. We just kind of would like to know which direction we can go and what we're allowed to do so that we can reflect that in our quote process.
Yeah, I could be all the questions.
Okay, Klaus, do you want to go first?
All right, thanks for the presentation, sir. You were saying, which is an interesting point, the flashing on this building here, which is equal to your building over there, right, has not been brought back to original.
I guess over time it was rotten, and rather than restore it, they just covered it over with plywood and whatever they could get to fill the voids. But it has no architectural features left on it. It's just basically the crown moldings and the dentil moldings have all been removed. Whereas this one here is original, but both structures are in poor condition as far as the rot of the wood is concerned. So they both need attention.
Interesting.
Chris.
Could we get a copy maybe of, I just don't know what's been covered up here, what still exists over there. I'm just having a hard time picturing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, basically, I don't have any pictures. We can certainly provide that. But initially, that one there has, are you familiar with dental moldings? Mm-hmm. That is basically across the entire perimeter of the building. And then there's crown moldings from the wall to the soffit transition and from there to the roof transition. This one here has no crown moldings and no dental moldings. They were obviously rotted at some point. They've taken them all off and they've just covered it with angled plywood or something or such. So it's just basically a box that they built either over or in place of all of their architectural features.
When would that have been done?
Many years ago, I would say. Many years ago, I couldn't guess as to the date, but for sure more than a decade. It was painted as well at the same time this building was painted. So whenever that process was done, and that was more than a decade ago, I'm sure. So it's been like that for quite some time.
Jonathan?
Sure, thanks. So your big question is what's required, what's allowed. And forgive me, but how familiar are you with the bylaw that's in place right now for that building that was circulated to us by Marie? Have you spent a lot of time with that already? So I think like that's your answer like right now. And the answer is that you'd have to maintain every little piece that you just explained, and it would be against the bylaw to do anything that's like this building to that building presently. And if we were to do any of those adjustments, what we're talking about is a bylaw amendment, which needs to be done by council, which we would then recommend to them. Is that correct, Dorothy?
The bylaw lists the specific heritage attributes of the building. When those attributes are listed in the bylaw, those are the things that we would expect would be preserved, okay, if at all possible, right? Chris?
Yeah, and I think there's two parts to it. There's that minimum standard in the bylaw, and the bylaws we've had a lot of trouble with. Like the library would be a good example where through a loophole, they're able to put this metal glass cube on the back of it. And it comes down to interpretation of those bylaws. So they're not great. But that being said, the precedent with the town hall renovation so far has been to go above that standard and try to do things that are as close as we can get to what they would have looked like before. The windows were an example of a compromise where they're not, say, a full wooden window, but they're a lot better than the ones before. The fire hose tower would be another good example of, it's not 100% the way it was before, but it's a lot better than it was after the last round of renovations. So from my perspective, when it comes to something like the cupola, if we could partner with some kind of a college program or community group or somebody that would have the skills or you know what I mean, in a way that we could do it that might save on costs, that would be great.
I think with reflective of demise of McGuagan College, I think that may be difficult. I don't believe that a high school team would have the experience to work at that height. And I may be wrong. I'm obviously not going to just close the book on that, but it may be a bit of a reach now with Algonquin having closed their trade schools.
And is it something that gets built in the ground and then a crane hoists it up and drops it in place?
We'd have to get up there and see whether it was built as part of the structure. So as the roof framing is such, if it's incorporated with that, then it would have to be done in place. If it was an add-on, if it's sitting on top of the roof sheathing, then we could have it removed, restored, and put back up. If that's the case, that's a much more achievable thing, and it can be done over time, but the roof can't be replaced until the cupola is back in place. So that's kind of a timeline thing there. So.
Gladys?
Chris referred to this bylaw that would be in place that would govern what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. I presume that bylaw was in place for a number of years.
It was enacted in 2023.
It was revised.
It was a
Revised? When was it enacted?
So,
Because the old bylaw did not list the heritage attributes, but that's why we have them all revised.
so that's why then the town just did whatever they wanted to and not brought it back to original.
Here, in
Here.
this building, yes,
We're working against that.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I realize that, but I have a hard time making these people spend a lot of money to bring it back to its original. That's not gonna be cheap,
No,
okay? When this building, which is right next door, wasn't done.
Well, no, I think you're misunderstanding it. This building got redone in the 70s.
Right.
And that's when these changes happened. The changes that happened in 2020, in the 2020s, were a lot more authentic and went above and beyond what the bylaw requires. So I would say, yes, we need to keep following that trend and keep up with that and not revert to the 1970s style where we take it out and we put whatever's the cheapest option in.
And to this end, like last meeting, we kind of gave the gears to the folks down on Main Street that put the flat flashing on and took off the toothed type of thing on the fascia, right? I'm not using the right words, but we just talked about how we don't want that. So that's the thing that we got to be talking about right here.
Like I would say,
I have to agree for the character of the building, the dental moldings, the crown moldings and such is far more important. The cupola, to restore that to what it used to be, does nothing to the heritage look of the building, in my opinion. It would save a whole lot of grief just to cover it over, because what we have now is basically a vinyl covered box.
Mhm.
And to replace that, you'd be talking, I would guess, $100,000.
When was that vinyl put on there? Is that recent?
No, it's been there
Okay.
for probably 20, 25 years, I would think. But
Jenny?
In the bylaw, it lists the bell tower. Is that the same? That's the people
we're
on the bell
talking
tower.
about?
the bell
are
tower's here, is it not?
No.
No, it's
the same thing,
specific.
is it
These
not?
have different
If you-
bylaws.
and if you look at the picture on the pedestal, the actual one is much more grand than
Yes.
what's in place right now.
And that's what it's referring to, we think. The people on the bell
Yes,
tower are the same
yes,
thing.
I believe so. There's only one thing up on top there.
Yeah,
It used to house a bell.
Yeah.
And
which makes
then,
sense.
Yeah,
The
base
bell.
of wooden original wood bell tower at West Wing.
So base suggests that the top is already gone, right?
right.
I guess my concern with the bylaw is that, and we've run into this problem, is that it doesn't even list the eaves at all. It just says lower
Huh.
pitch gable roof. Like, that's very concerning to me that those aren't listed.
Chris?
so I would say, because we've had these issues with the rewritten bylaws, the downtown design guidelines are a little more specific. And maybe that would be a better place to start. Because as John says, if we're asking other places to follow the downtown design guidelines and our CIP program says we're supposed to be following the downtown design guidelines, the town should be following that lead. When it comes to the cupola specifically, it's too bad. I was hoping that maybe the roof could be done and then that could be considered at a later date. But if that's got to be done first,
Yeah, I guess
it's
the
not
biggest
ideal.
issue there is if a steel roof is adopted, the flashing and such needs to be incorporated into that structure. And my fear is carpenters and roofers don't work together. One is they're specialized trades, so it would be a completely different entity. You'd have to get a completely different quote, pretty much, to have the cupola rebuilt and then somebody to come in and do the roof. But they do need to time that and coordinate it so that the flashings and such are put in at the right time. So basically the basic shell of the cupola needs to be installed, the roof flashings installed, and then the finish on top of that. So there's a lot of coordination required there to get it done right and without damage. Again, depending on what roof structures stipulated.
So is what's there now original, or is that something, a box they put up when they tore down the original one?
They tore the top off and they re-sided it. From what I understand, the louvers and such are original, but that's it. There's really nothing else that is original to it, as far as the look is concerned.
John?
Is there a way, because a lot of these projects are tough because we have to spend all the money all at once, and as you're saying, like, we don't want to get rid of that thing entirely, but obviously the roof is a lot more important because we need a roof on the building. Like, is there a compromise where as part of it gets there, that in the future we can place something there, but it's more of like a knee wall or something, and we know that down the road we want to replace it?
Not easily, because it does have a roof. There's a tin roof on it now, which doesn't resemble the original either. So
No.
you'd have to rebuild the lower part, and then you'd have to cut the roof off, build it, and reapply the roof, or rebuild the roof completely on top.
You just do like a quarter of the build and then the crane situation on top like a year later.
You'd have to take the roof off again to do that. Off
Yeah,
a couple.
temporary roof. Like, I'm just trying to find compromises
I don't
to
think
like
there's
not
any-
do it all at
So
once.
what's
There's no cost-effective way to do that in
Okay.
order to keep it weather tight in the interim.
Yeah.
So what's inside it?
Just a hollow structure. There's nothing.
Okay, so the actual roofing
Shouldn't be
material
anymore.
doesn't go underneath the.
Yeah, I don't know whether as I say, the framing of that cupola is tied into the roof structure, or whether it's just on the surface.
Hmm.
We'd have to go up into the bell
Yeah.
tower and actually look and see how the structure was put together to be sure whether it can be taken off to be rebuilt. That's going to be difficult because the roof needs to be tied into it to keep it weather tight.
Mm.
So there's no real way to do one or the other. They pretty well got to be done in unison.
Let's see. Go ahead, Chris.
So I think the host tower is a good precedent for this one, where with the host tower, we spent more money than we needed to. We could have torn it down. We could have left it the way it was, but we repointed it. We sealed the windows and we left it in place in case they want to do something with it in the future. When I talk about this bell tower, I didn't realize that what was there was original. So I thought maybe that was just a box that was put on it to imitate what was there. But if that's the base that used to be there, and saying maybe 10, 20 years in the future, there is some kind of reasonable way to rebuild the cupola, the best way to do that would be to still have the base to build it off of on. And the best way to preserve what's been preserved to date, and the fact it even survived that renovation from the 70s, that was a time that not much was worth saving. So the fact that they saw the foresight in saving that, I feel like we should keep it up there, build the roof around it, and maybe eventually there'll be a cupola again. But in the meantime, get the pigeons out of it and get it sealed up.
Class?
Yeah, what's on the roof right now?
On the cupola roof,
Yeah,
tin.
it is tin.
Yeah.
And the whole roof itself,
The main roofs are all asphalt shingle.
you'd have to take that all off.
Yeah.
You can't go over top of
Not sensibly. Ideally, it should be taken off, and then you would put another membrane, waterproof membrane over the decking. But ideally, in order to really see what's under that and make sure everything's structurally good, it should be removed.
that. Do you think the decking is okay?
There was no mention of issues with decking when the original assessment was done. So I'm fairly confident that there's not going to be anything of any real substantial issues. There's always something you're going to have to patch here and there. But as far as the whole of the roof, I don't think that will be
It's probably the original board, isn't it?
I would say yes.
Yeah, because there's the original board, they're 1 inch.
Yes, they're heavy duty. Now they may have, when they took the original tin roof off, there's a good chance they went over with plywood, which is not a bad thing. You're not going to see it anyway. But you won't know that till the shingles are removed.
Not going and looking at it personally myself, but I agree with what you're saying. You got to do both those jobs together, because if you don't, you're going to get leakage.
Yeah, or damage to the roof because you don't want them, up there hammering and banging when you've got brand new tin on the roof. So I'd like to have the tin and everything as the last process.
Yeah.
And once the carpentry is done, then they can come in work together to get, the only thing is the base flashings are the only thing the carpenter and the roofer would have to be coordinating with. It's because the flashings go up underneath the sidings and then the siding goes over that. So they would have to basically work together to make that work.
Yeah.
But I also don't know what's under that because I know they did use vinyl siding. There may not be much of a shell left. I really don't know what we're involved with cost-wise until they get up there and assess it.
Have you had any engineers looking at it at all?
Only the original company who assessed the building, I believe they're engineers. I think they're engineers. But there was no mention of, as I say, structural issues. There was no mention that they were up in the attic. There are issues here with ventilation. We have some serious ice dams, which are a problem. So that's got to be rectified before we put a roof on. Otherwise, there's a good chance it'll tear the new roof off or the new fascia and soffit. That may be simply adding ventilation, and that's the other issue with the soffit that's there. We would have to modify it to allow ventilation. So that would have to be in keeping with a look that we want. But it is necessary that we can't just put solid wood back on the soffit. So we do have to provide ventilation to stop the ice dams. And again, it may simply be ventilation. It may be, I suspect, is ventilation and insulation as a combination. But that we'd have to get up in the attic and do a physical check to see what we're working with up there. The other issue, council, I believe council or a couple of members of council was adamant they wanted a steel roof. Originally, this probably would have had stamped shingle roof, tin shingles. Now, as I say, it's asphalt. The consensus is kind of the only way you can go with a steel roof on a building like this, if you so choose, is the higher end. The lower end is what's called an exposed fastener. They're prone to leakage, and they come loose over time. You're constantly maintaining, tightening fasteners, and they look terrible. So they wouldn't suit this. So if they say, I want a tin roof, then we need to go with what's called a hidden fastener. Some people know it as a standing seam roof. The Parliament buildings is a good example of standing seam, but it's the old time, they're soldered together. This one here is more bend and fastening the panels together for a similar look. It actually looks exactly like, bad example maybe, but the Burger King across the road. That's a standing seam on the front porch. So it's the same style of roof as that. No exposed fasteners for leakage, no required maintenance. As far as the metal is concerned, you'll easily get 3 decades out of it without any issues. The color, not so much. You may get 30 years out of it. It won't likely need to repaint, but it will lose its color retention over time. And a lot of that is dependent on the color that's chosen as well, how durable it's going to be. The other issue with a steel roof is a safety issue. We would have to incorporate ice shields to break the ice and snow. If you have a very steep roof like the church does, nothing builds up. So any amount of snow and ice automatically slides off, so there's no buildup. Here we have a lower pitch roof, so snow and ice tend to stick to the roofing membrane and may come off in large chunks and sheets. When it does come off, it can cause injury, obviously, to pedestrians. It can cause issues with structure. It can tear off eaves trough. That's the other thing we have to do is increase the quality of the eaves trough with a steel roof, because the ice that does come off will just shear the cheap aluminum stuff that's there now. It'll just shear right off. So that's another added expense that would have to be incorporated as well. The other issue is we've installed rooftop HVAC right at the eave of the back wall. And so the ice coming off there may or may not cause an issue with the condensers, which are mounted on top of those units. So if it comes off at speed, it could do some serious damage. Again, that's just a hypothetical. It may never happen, but there is a possibility. I think I just want everyone to know that there's drawbacks, there's positives and negatives in either material. But look-wise, steel is excellent, longevity. The cost is about 4 times an asphalt roof. I don't believe you're going to get 4 times the life out of a steel roof because they're not made like they used to. And again, we do have issues with other factors we'd have to take into account as well.
So basically, we go with a steel roof, we have no money for anything else.
You're probably right now, with excluding the political climate we're in, I figure $250,000 just for the tin work on both buildings. I don't know what we're going to see here for if the tariffs go in June. That could rise 30 to 50%. So whether we're even going to proceed at this year with the climate, I don't know. We may want to refocus something on the woodwork and the carpentry, and then postpone the roof possibly till next year, which wouldn't be an issue, I don't believe.
Jonathan?
I don't know how much this is within our jurisdiction anyway, but like how much more life is there in the roof? But also, we're only here to advise on. We just like the heritage attributes, but like, has council already approved this to go forward? Or I guess you're trying to put together something to bring to council. Is that where we're at?
Well, we have to put out a request for quote.
Yeah. Okay.
Our department was directed to go with steel roof.
Okay.
That was the preferred choice. But no costing or anything was done, and I wanted to be here in order to get your input before we go through all the processes of scoping and prepping for a quote that we don't know really what we're allowed to do or what's preferred to do. So.
Sure. Yeah, we just need your help, understand what we can and can't do, and, you know,
Dawn? You
tackle
want-
this as a team, so.
So what's the cost? Oh, you already told us the cost of going with steel.
Yeah, that's approximate cost. We haven't actually, that was based on a little older numbers before what we're seeing today. So it'll probably be the full of that to get the roofs on this, but that doesn't include all of the substructures.
We just put a new steel roof on our garage, much smaller deal. No valleys, just straight roof. And what we did, we ended up going out, purchasing the steel ourselves. Then we hired the people to put it on. And our roof came in at about $4,000. It's just a double car garage.
Mhm.
But that $4,000, one of the other quotes that we had from someone was $9,500 plus another $300 if we wanted the shingles taken away.
Mhm.
So you really have to look. And the other thing too, I hear you saying about the tariffs. That's when you go and you look for a source somewhere else. And we may have to pay more for it because we are getting it somewhere else. Because these tariffs
the
can't be
issue,
handcuffed.
the issue with that, it doesn't matter which side of the fence the tariffs are coming from, they're going to increase the pricing. All the HVAC systems have gone up 30%. Why? Because it's 30% in their back pocket. That's what we're going to see here, I think. It's just hypothetical. I don't know. Of course, the quote that we put out, we would have to scrutinize it. Of course, they're all going to kind of be from the same playbook. So costing is, there's only so many sources here in the area for steel roofs,
But Chris, we just dealt with the bridge, Confederation Bridge, and some of that product was coming from the States, and so it got a hold put on it so that it could be resourced from somewhere else. Yeah, it's going to cost us a little bit more money, but we still knew
steel roofing is made in Canada.
Well, yes, surely we wouldn't be buying it from the States.
That's
would
But
we?
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's
So,
making it.
I think we're
They're going
getting
to
off
increase the price.
the
Yeah,
heritage stuff.
Yeah,
It's council's job to decide what we can afford. It's our job to decide what meets the heritage attributes, what meets the design guidelines, what would be the best option for the building.
See
So
what-
how important is the cupola?
I think extraordinary.
And what's the cost of it?
Lose that whole
I think we need to look at that whole picture. And maybe it can't be done, or maybe it's something that can be done.
The quote needs to reflect the work that needs to be done, and then, as you say, council can figure that out. So, like, you got a lot of answers are coming through. Like,
Is there anyone that would support taking it off and just putting a roof on?
The cupola?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so that's the committee's.
You lose the whole look of it. You do that.
if council wants to make another decision, I suppose that's the prerogative. But this committee,
Yeah,
but this committee is not in
That's their
favor of.
No.
Like, we're in favor of maintaining the heritage attributes of the building.
But you've already lost part of the cupola. It's not what it originally was.
No.
So you're talking about them building something completely different. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like, because we've lost so much of that already. If it was already there, the way that it was originally built, then I could understand that. But I kind of have that feeling like, is that what we should be doing? Or maybe, like I said, maybe it's something that could happen years down the road, not quite the same as what's there, something that could just be added to the roof and not hurt the roof that's already on. I think we need to keep our minds really open here.
Yeah, I think if everybody walked down the sidewalk, they'd find they don't even see it.
Thank you.
And the trees are completely
That's good.
blocking the view. So right now, it's just a white box sitting on the roof.
In the wintertime, you see it.
Well, you would see it in the winter, but then it's covered in snow and it kind of becomes just
But
a
if you,
Anyway, doesn't
bland
matter.
addition to the, anyway, I think if you look walking down the street, if somebody hadn't mentioned a cupola on the roof, you would never know it was there. That's how insignificant it is.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think that's the thing with a lot of heritage attributes, though, where it's like that's why people sign up for the walking tours. Where once they've done the walking tour, they say, "Oh, I never noticed that," or "Oh."
Like I think things in eye view, like windows, doors, architectural
But
trim,
I guess the thing is
that type of thing is critical.
everybody's got an opinion, and the municipal heritage committees have a mandate, and they've got like it's defined in the legislation of what this stuff is and what the value is. And we're
I guess
basing
the
it
end
off
of
that.
the,
We're
the
not
end of the
basing
day
it
is,
off of-
where's this money coming from?
Well, but this is
The
a council
taxpayers
thing.
are paying
it's
for
like
this.
If the,
Do
if the
they
committee's
care?
going to come up with a recommendation, we've got the mandate of what we make our recommendations on, and I just want to stick to that because that's why we're here, and we could be here all night if we're on tangents. But I think to address Don's comments, it's not original, but what we're hearing is that the base of it is original. And if we were ever to build something off of it in the future, it would be much better to build it off the original base than something that would have to be constructed new. So to maintain what's there as it's existing would be the most authentic way to keep what we can and potentially enable the future to build that cupola back up. But if we get rid of it, then not only have we lost the cupola, but now we've lost the base of the cupola, we've lost the dimensions of that base and everything that goes into that. So that's where I think there's no way that we don't lose something if we take that down.
But is there anything there in that cupola to save? Is it worth saving? Is there any structure in there that is actually worth saving? Or is the whole thing, if you're going to have it, the whole thing's going to have to be built from the bottom up? I mean, that could just be,
Yeah, we would
Ready
have
to
to
crumble.
determine.
But we don't know
Sure.
that.
We'd
You
have
don't
to
know
determine.
that either.
No, I don't.
No, we don't know the answer to that. Right. And you, slightly different, you mentioned the wood, that it might be rotten, maybe it could be repainted or,
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest it's being repainted because it's a constant, every 3 to 5 years you're maintaining it. The costs are
right. So the standards say that if you cannot restore what's there, then you replace it with something that looks the same. Is that correct? The standards?
Yeah, like our standards
guidelines.
say wood for wood or
Yeah.
masonry for masonry, but did we not just paint the soffits on this section of the building when we did the renovations here?
Before our time, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, like the renovations a year or two ago, because we replaced when we did the
I've been
windows.
here 2 years and renovations were done before I got here.
Okay, sorry. But I'm pretty sure this building was painted in the last 5 years.
But what I'm saying is it should look the same, even if it's not the original wood that you've painted.
Yes.
It shouldn't be, whatever you said happened to this building shouldn't happen. It should be restored, replaced to look the way it does, right?
And to some degree, the point of this committee is that you do need to paint your house every couple of years because in Smiths Falls, we have a new mandate for maintaining our heritage. And heritage includes painting.
But I guess my question is why?
That's the prerogative of council. That's not what we're discussing.
They don't understand what I'm asking is let's make it look exactly the way it is, but with a material that
Yeah,
has longevity.
this is a heritage committee where we maintain heritage attributes. So that's like the
Yeah,
answer
so
that
that's,
you're
what
going
I'm
to
saying.
get.
That's my thing, not trying to change the look of that,
Yeah.
I want a product to put out there that is going to last 15, 20 years without heavy maintenance, rather than having to continue to go up, paint. And if you look at the side of the building over here, you can see what sloppy painters do. They've done more damage to the stonework.
Yeah.
So it's just not practical or reasonable to continue to patch the wood that's there and repaint every number of years. But there are products out there that mimic it or can be machined or milled to mimic it exactly, but they're made of plastic composites that last 30 years.
Chris?
So I think the thing, like if this was if it was a private property owner that wanted to do changes to designated attributes, they'd come in and they'd say, this is what we're proposing. These are examples of where it's worked well. This is why we can replace it like for like without a noticeable difference. We can go out and take a look at it. We can say, yeah, we're confident in that and stamp it. But it's just, there's been so many examples where like the most recent one on Main Street where they had the nice dental pattern, replace it with just the flat sheet metal. It puts us in an uncomfortable position to say just a blanket yes to putting up some kind of composite or more
Well, the
durable material.
composite would exactly mimic what's there. So
But there's a lot of examples where it doesn't, and that's where
Well, that's
we need to know.
that's been done by people who have no regard for history. I do, but I in the sensible realm, it's why waste all kinds of money repairing wood that is continually going to be, the costs are continually going to be escalating, where we can replace it. That if I hadn't told you it was composite, you would look up and say, wow, that's amazing woodwork. And it looks exactly like it did. And that's how real it can be. And even touching it, feeling it, it feels like wood, looks like wood, mimics wood in every regard. The costs are initially higher, but the maintenance is virtually nothing for a number of decades. The actual bandstand is kind of a good example of that, where as to what can be done with this product. So.
like the bandstand's a mixed example. Like it's
No, but I mean, as far as the architectural features that can be.
yeah, like that was a really contentious one where the design that was approved by council wasn't the design that was built, and the design endorsed by the committee wasn't what was built. And now we see the paint coating failing on it, and apparently we can't paint it the same way we could if it was wood. So this is where I'm worried.
Yeah,
If we put
that's
this
not
stuff
the
up,
composite I would put on. The composite that's more of a wood-based composite that has to be, it's not, the colors aren't impregnated in it, so it's just a top cover, like paint. This particular one is more on, it's a wood plastic composite that has color 100% through. So if it was any color but white, this wouldn't be as easy to do. But because the product comes in white, you can machine it, you can mill it, and it's white throughout. So as I say, to look at it, there's no maintenance required on this. So it's a little bit different than the actual product, but the look that you could achieve, it's endless. You can do anything with it, and they have all kinds of architectural profiles already available. So it's kind of a pick and put as opposed to having to machine and mill to fit. So.
Again, thank you for your presentation. I think you're on the right page. I agree that the cupola, whatever you want to call it, I guess, should remain, and the roof should be fixed properly so it doesn't leak.
Yeah, it wouldn't. So you're leaning towards a steel roof, I guess?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, we're not gonna have money for a steel roof.
We'll just have to do it in phases is basically so.
Yeah, so the dental work that we're trying to fix to make, you come into see a historical building, you see it's all mixed matched, all the trim. The goal was to try to fix that. So if we go with steel, then it's just steel, and we'll have to add all the stuff what Ron said as well to protect any ice dams falling down and everything. So if we go with steel, we're limited to the rest of the stuff we can do.
The dental work that you want to replace and so forth, are you thinking of wood or composite?
Composite.
Yeah, composite. So it's like if you go up on the roof and have a closer look, like we're on these roofs all the time, it's rotten. All the stuff is rotting right out. And that'll just be a different bill. What was the cost to paint it?
It was $75,000 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was a quote we dug up. just to paint all that stuff.
But it wasn't originally not a steel roof. You said it was.
It would have been a steel stamp shingle.
Right.
Yeah. So they didn't really, this, I can't say it never had a standing seam roof originally, but it would be unlikely. Most buildings other than, like I say, Parliament building or the very high-end government buildings, because they're all they're all soldered together, just not very many people do that. So this one here, very likely, I can't prove it unless we go back in history, but I would suggest there's a very strong likelihood that it's stamped shingle.
Chris?
I think for the cupola and the roof part, same as Claus, for the composite stuff, I'd like more information before the committee gives a recommendation one way or another, because it's just, there's so many different types of, we've seen so many bad examples of this in town. I don't want to.
So here we have the opportunity to use different products and use it properly and showcase what can be done. You know what I'm saying? And have a roof that's going to last us for another
100 years.
100 years.
But it's not up to us to
No, but
decide on what the
we're-
roof is made of. That's council,
Yeah.
right? Council decides whether it's going to be metal or not.
Mhm.
It's not us. We don't.
Can we make a recommendation?
Oh,
Well, it's not a heritage feature.
our prerogative is to keep in place the heritage attributes and to advocate for those attributes that we see fit. And then, further, and I'm sorry that the cost seems high and that the political climate is such and that the time that it reached its expiration is today. However, we're going to be steadfast in the attributes that we maintain for heritage's, for the heritage sake of the building. And then beyond that, this is definitely a council discussion.
Yeah, no, we understand.
Yeah, the budget, yeah, of course.
This is the information gathering kind of see.
Super.
So then we can just come forth and say, this is the recommendation. It's not feasible for what we have. This is what we're recommending on our end. And either way, for us, we just want to make sure we put a good product up.
And I think originally council had assumed that it was just put a roof on.
Yeah.
And walk away.
There's
But
no talk about
it's much more
refixing.
It's a
complicated.
heritage building, right? And that's, we're workshopping the exact experience
That
that
heritage and then the
expect folks
condition,
to-
the condition factors of multiple segments of it. So just trying to, so obviously the cost is going to be incurred in trying to replicate the trim work is going to be extremely expensive. So we just may have to split projects up over a period of 2-3 years or whatever council decides to make it.
That information is really important to have in front of us.
Yeah,
Due
well,
diligence,
we
right?
don't have that now because obviously it would have been a huge waste of time to go in a direction we don't know we're allowed to go. So that's the only reason we need your input. And I respect all your input, of course. And personally, I have no real concern. If you decide you want whatever you decide, that's certainly fine. I just need confirmation of that so that we can
Yes.
provide that.
And then we can just present to council, this is the cost. Show us the money.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's easy. We've got 2 councillors in here and now they'll pass it through.
No, we're not. We're not spending millions because taxes cannot go up any higher than they are.
You might lose some votes, but
Just go in.
I might lose some votes,
No,
although I
no,
think
it's-
I'd be gaining a lot of votes
No, no, I'm
because people are
saying-
concerned about their taxes. So we have to be very
Yeah, I don't think
cautious of
anything
how
is
we spend the
critical.
money.
Nothing is critical. The roof isn't going to start to flow water anytime soon. So,
Good to know.
But we need to be thinking about it.
well, that's why
because it's
that's why
not-
we're on it now to try.
So what kind of a timeline do you envision then?
I figure we should, at this particular point, it would be nice if we could get this off, like the woodwork and such, mostly completed, excluding the cupola. So the soffit and the fascia and that end, all the woodwork to be complete. And then the following year, would be next year, obviously, put in the tin roof and redo the cupola.
Sounds good.
But again, money quotes coming in, we'll see. I think either way, we'll have to put off the roof 1 year. Because originally I thought we could just put a roof, but it's a little bit more in depth than that. So.
All right.
All right.
Any more comments, questions?
Very good.
Okay, so I'll get some info together on the materials.
Yeah.
And some examples as to what could be accomplished with it and what what they predict as far as longevity and maintenance is required, so you have some idea. And go from there.
Thank you very much.
We don't care
Thank you
about
for your time.
Thank you guys for your time.
It's not for us.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Cost is Don's problem.
Well, Jenny,
The cost is your problem.
Jenny wants to say something.
just procedurally, this like an alteration permit of some kind would have to go to council aside from the costing, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Aside from the costing and like the final approval, like an alteration permit would need to be obtained, right, from council? Because we're changing things that are listed in the bylaw, correct?
If that is indeed the case, through you, Madam Chair, if we are changing something that is altering a designated feature, then council would be approval authority for that. So council would have the opportunity to consider a resolution for same as if it were for a private property.
And that's aside from whatever approval they need for like doing the roof repairs, correct? Those are specific to the features?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Marie, could we get a copy of the bylaw?
Yeah.
I'll study that.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
all right.
time.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time.
So we don't have any other items on the agenda. We have, it says round table, but we can save that till next week if that's okay with everybody. So the next meeting next Tuesday, same time, same place, and someone move that we adjourn. And class seconds, all in favor of adjourning? No, I want to stay.
Right, I'll just let Tech know we're done. Who moved that?
Could be so different.
Adjournment? You
I
seconded.
second it.
Who moved? Don?
Chris.
Chris.
Chris, thank you.